ra lim af, el gin les nua, dunna, en lie, el j rits, the ob, tha, erots, roya, n of, emth, gin fig, rof, sknket, wef, stajig ges, emtel, sadog, ritua, f, nv, ro, stb, steb, num, wa vid, tel out ne, th oba, na, gin ru chef, rutuk ne, ro, na apemac, gin tulip, roya, fi. And featuring your god's dem outer voice encounter, Lutz techniques, or intelligent aboleth for your suggest familiar, the campaign me if devour, giving alien few plotting events strangely, both or unsettlingly, that's in Moonbeast and a Story. If you're plotting a campaign or encounter featuring an aboleth, intellect devourer, moonbeast, or even the outer gods, let me suggest a few techniques for giving them a voice in your story that's both strangely alien and unsettlingly familiar. But before we begin, if you're in need of a Pathfinder 1E adventure path, have a look at Sorceress the Dietrich House. Designed for a party of 4 level 3 characters, this adventure has sinister mysteries, unsolved crimes, and a haunted house with lurking terrors to challenge your players. As well as unexpected treasures courtesy of the dynamic and thematic loot system, which makes for compelling rewards for those willing to brave the depths of the Dietrich House. Available right now on DriveThruRPG. Now then, aberrations are alien beings from realms beyond. They're strange, they're bizarre, and they can be very, very off-putting. So, giving them an unusual speaking style, something that really sets them apart from the most likely very humanoid party, can benefit your campaign in several ways. First off, tone and atmosphere. You can really dig into the uncanny and the otherworldly, incorporating elements of eldritch and psychological horror by really playing up the otherness of the alien forces your players are contending with. There's also novelty. A different way of talking is a good way to differentiate aberrations and their ilk from more familiar fantasy monsters like dragons, demons, and goblins. Finally, you can get mystery. By adding a layer of obtuse obscurity on the information you're giving your players, you can give them an intellectual challenge as well as the thrill of discovery after they successfully tease out the true meaning of the cryptic things you've been throwing at them. Now, before we get into the nuts, bolts, teeth, and tentacles of it all, let me tell you a story about a campaign that I personally DM'd and how I could have done things better. I DM'd a campaign really themed around Lovecraftian entities such as Cthulhu and the King in Yellow. And I made a pretty significant misstep. I gave Hastur, the King in Yellow, a pretty normal speaking voice, and I had him interact directly with the party. He gave them instructions, they had a brief but memorable trip to Carcosa, and a good time was had by all. Maybe. Those that survived, anyway. But looking back on it, the atmosphere would have been much stronger had I not simply spelled things out for my players. When the King in Yellow communicated with my players at all, it should have been strange, mysterious, through other human agents, and very spooky. So between then and now, I've come across a couple of techniques that I think really aid in giving voice to these alien beings. The first one are Dada poems. This style of poetry comes to us from the Dadaism art movement that arose in Europe in the early 1900s. The movement rejected the logic, reason, and asceticism of European culture at the time. A Dada poem is simple to make. Just take your dialogue on a piece of paper and cut out the individual words, then jumble them all up, and one by one, in random order, lay them out. And there you have your Dada poem. Now, of course, that's the old way of doing things. Nowadays, we have computers for just about everything. In the description, you'll find a helpful link to a Dada poem site. Just plug in your dialogue and press the button for a shiny, new Dada poem, made from whatever your words were. I find that the Dada method works particularly well if you want to name drop something. Here's an example taken directly from The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Was vigilant his once, I below the still, in which has idle capped still is. Source for of, lonely places chasm, accursed sunken earth the, monolith storm in presence young, on the suppose but slay, more again lives around the spot, sailed stones to the ministry of April City has, Cthulhu sealed after, over sun him the. See how the name Cthulhu stuck out there. Now, if you want to increase the odds of your players grabbing that hook, just use the name several times, and they'll be much more likely to pick up on it as important. This is a pretty easy to use method. It only requires a typed version of your dialogue. To see an example of this technique used, have a look at the video game Control. Another method for imparting strangeness into a scenario is backwards talking. This method is occasionally used by demented filmmaker David Lynch in shows like Twin Peaks, but the most famous example is Red Rum from The Shining. To do this, write down the dialogue you want to deliver, then read through it and find the significant sounds in each word. Then reverse the order that you say them and the order of the words, reading them from back to front. Let's go over a couple of examples. The phrase, "let's rock," becomes "Carstel," or "that gum you like is going to come back in style. Lest me cab, mock ot, gin og, stkel, umug, tath." This method is fairly difficult to pull off, so I would suggest limiting your use of it to shorter words and phrases, rather than long monologues. Finally, let me give you some general tips on how to deliver some of your newly created bizarre-sounding dialogue. First, at the beginning of your campaign, consider limiting your player choice of races. Eldritch horror and uncanny horror, where aberrations do some of their best work, relies heavily on fear of the unknown. However, this is hard to achieve in certain settings, especially where novelty is a source of excitement and wonder. Examples of settings like this are the Star Wars galaxy and many of the Final Fantasy games. They're constantly throwing new, exciting, and wondrous things at you. So the unknown is fun and enjoyable rather than dark and sinister. A level of normalcy has to be established before you can really throw something abnormal or uncanny at your players. Next, limit language selection choices. Aclo, deep speech, and necral are three big ones. Your goal is to create a communication barrier. If your players can just say hi to the alien monstrosity or the octopus living in a cultist's head in its own language, that barrier is removed. Finally, this kind of dialogue is best delivered by human agents like cultists, asylum inmates, mediums in a trance, or seemingly normal but just a bit off townsfolk. Thank you for watching One Step to Better Aberrations from D6 Damage. If you're interested in Pathfinder 1 or Pathfinder 2e books, check out Noble Knight Games. They're a great resource for all of your gaming supplies. You can find them by following the link in the description. Also, if you'd like a great haunted house adventure, check out Sorceress the Dietrich House. Available right now on DriveThruRPG. Now, if you're interested in more strategy and gameplay guides for Pathfinder, check out D6 Damage on BitChute or YouTube. Finally, if you'd like to take your game further, check out the D6 Damage Discord. We have discussions, guides, and great content about all aspects of Pathfinder. The link is down in the description.